Hello everyone, how are you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we are here with a dummies guide to merching, the grand exchange as a whole, and also what is flipping. So that's what we're going to get into, but if you're looking for a little bit of quick cash, I still have a Twitter giveaway going on for the next 2 days. I'll probably allow people to go from another video, so if you guys want to check that out, feel free to in the description below. But today I come to you guys from the Grand Exchange. The Grand Exchange is a lovely place found a little bit northwest of the center of Varrock, and this is basically the trading post of old school Runescape. This is where people come to the Grand Exchange. They then have buy or sell offers where they can do as they wish with their items or cash. And as for an example, we will look at a lobster. Whenever I buy this lobster, I will be buying this lobster from the lowest seller on the entire market. Whoever's willing to offer their lobster for the lowest will then be bought by me right here at 175. I put in the offer at 184. However, it's sold at 175 because it doesn't matter what my initial offer is. If there is a lower seller, I will get it for their offer instead. Now instead, if we choose to sell it, say for 168, we will sell to the highest bidder, which here is 172. So, as we can tell, there is a difference between what the highest bidder is willing to pay and what the lowest seller is willing to sell for. This makes sense because, if they had what was identical prices, they would have already been matched up on the Grand Exchange. This here is what we call a margin. Now that we know about the current margin, this is more a better representation of what's going on at the Grand Exchange. So here we have a lobster, and we know that the current margin is 175 to 172. Now, there's no way to know how many lobsters are currently in for those prices, but here I'll say just 5,000 and 10,000. Now, there's ways to roughly estimate that, and that's based off of the buying and selling quantities per hour that you can see on the top right of the screen. This gives you a good indicator. If you see prices moving around a lot, then you will be able to understand over time that, obviously there's not that many on the market for different prices. But as I was saying to the left with the prices, basically you have the current margin and then you have what is the possible margin. If this kind of goes out of whack, or maybe if you wait a little bit, you could be able to say buy it down here closer to 171, or even if you wait for that guy to sell all of his, you could buy it at 169. You don't necessarily have to take the current margin. You could just throw in an offer a few GP below that and assume that in due time it may be able to buy, because prices naturally just kind of pinball around depending on the time of day. While you can do that with buying, you can also do that with selling. See up here, you do have some offers and you could be able to slot in an offer for 177 and wait for these two to sell, or if you like the margin that you currently could get, then maybe you just go ahead and take that. Really, it's kind of a decision that's up to you, but it's good to understand what is possible at least. As I've been demonstrating, the current margin is 3, however, it seems like between 4 to 8 would be possible depending on, how much the item moves, and really that ultimately comes down to just having experience with flipping different items. So while you can improve flipping technically and you can kind of become mechanically better at it, you do really have to practice with a ton of different items over time, but we'll get more into it. So now there are 2 ways to go about making money on the Grand Exchange. Basically, what we were just talking about, where you take advantage of the current margin, that is called flipping. You're just taking what you have readily available and making use of that margin, whether or not you change the prices a little bit. Ultimately, that is what flipping is. However, there is also merching. Now, the reason I use merching in the title for this video and everything is because for some reason the word flipping, insanely not liked by YouTube. Don't know why. But merching, however, is where you go about investing into items for whatever purpose you see. Maybe you think the item's going up in the future due to updates, due to in-market demand, whatever you think that reason is. If you're investing in an item and pouring your resources into it, that's more so what we would consider merching. So it's important to distinguish the two. Really, flipping is a quick approach to it, and merching is more of a long-term gain that probably won't have the returns, considering flipping is very compounded. So now that we understand the basics, I'll delve into a lot of the questions that I get surrounding flipping and some of the questions that I even ask for your guys' opinions on. And the first one is, how much money do I need to start? This one is really just personal. I mean, I started a series where I built like 50 mil plus from 1 GP just by flipping. So you don't need any money, but if you want to do it efficiently and really start to kind of understand what it is, I think 500k to a mil is a good barrier of entry so that you can actually buy an ample enough supply of stuff to be able to make money off of it. I mean, you can flip wherever, but I personally don't see it worth it, like running to the Grand Exchange to make 3k in a flip. So we're going to be short and sweet about this. Basically, there's 3 different types of flipping in my eyes as far as like overall volume is concerned in the Grand Exchange. There is high volume flipping, where you take commonly used skilling goods, say for instance herb lore herbs, and you flip those. So they're things that are going to be bought and sold all the time because they're cheap and they're needed for a skill. They won't have that much of a margin because, well, they're cheap, but it's definitely a good way to kind of get to understand the basics of flipping, and I'd recommend it for a lot of low levels. In addition to that, even if you like it at higher levels, it's a bit more of active flip, which makes it more fun for the person doing it. In addition to that, we have medium volume flipping, where I put this more in the tier of a lot of armor in-game, kind of is exactly at this point. Obsidian armor, for instance, Bando's armor, ancestral robes, barrows as well. I mean, really, this ranges anywhere from clue items that are 500k all the way to a lot of the medium level armor that you will see in the game unlocked around 60s or 70s. The medium volume is where you're probably going to stay for a lot of your flipping, and would be one that I recommend because it is definitely just a good spot to make money. There's a lot of demand for those items, and since people are kind of just selling their armor at will without too much of a care of the price, you also have availability for some good margins. Now, finally, you have low volume flipping, which is where you flip some, really unsold stuff like Scythe of Vitor right down here, for example, would be one. You also probably have a bit more of the Third Age armor, for instance, along with what could be some Jessica armor pieces. Now, that's not really something more for the beginner, so I mean, if you want to look more into the volumes and what you can kind of get into, I talk more about that in another video, but that's just the basic. So knowing that we as a new mercher are only going to be really in the high volume or low volume area, how can we find good flips? Well, if you're looking for high volume items that are used in skills a lot, what I'd recommend is just to go through some of the skill books, and just see what items are used where. Typically the higher tier items are going to be used a little bit more. And in addition to that, if you want better ideas, you can look at 1 to 99 guides and see what certain buyable skills recommend. There's a ton of different options, and it's pretty easy to get the hang of it. Now, for medium volume flipping, where we're doing more armor, what could be a better method? If you're just starting from base to nothing and you don't know what items you want to try, go around the Grand Exchange. What I do is, if I'm absolutely blanking, I'll hop world to world at the Grand Exchange and I'll see what we got looking around here. So, for instance, we have this guy with an Elysian. Maybe if I still had a couple bill, I'd be like, oh shit, I forgot about the Elysian. Let's try it. But, I mean, even looking around, this guy has some obsidian armor, typically a decent flip, so you can take that. This guy has some dragon armor. I typically think out of those, the boots and maybe the chain body would be the best out of them. And then over here we have a guy in full armadillo that is a clue reward, and the chest, legs, boots. I mean, honestly, a lot of the clue rewards are very good, so anything he's wearing, really. Blowpipe as well, and Fury sometimes can be okay. We also have Bando's plate body, Amulet of Glory trimmed, and then we have the Guthan's helm, which reminds me of Barrows and all the items that we have potential to do there. I mean, really, that's just it, in going about doing that, I can check now a lot of different items and see if they have good prices by doing the normal price checking method that we do. That's a great part about med-level flipping, is still a lot of this this armor is going to have such low margins. It might be like 20 to 50k that you can take the hit once. If you can continue to flip it a few more times, you'll definitely make your money back and more. Now, in addition to that, there are actually ways outside of the game of finding margins. The first one being a sponsor that I reached out to a long while back, and that is GE Tracker. They have just a fantastic site where you can search through a ton of different filters and just absolutely kill it merching wise. You can sort by highest margins or high volumes, which is really good for exactly what we're talking about here. A lot of the high volume items, stuff that trades greater than 5,000 times an hour. You have all the margins sorted there. And here you have the highest margin ones. Now, ultimately, these prices update every 15 minutes, so they're not exactly perfect. However, they'll give you a snapshot of what recent margins have been. So like we were using that graph earlier, that is just a snapshot of a recent margin, but it's very valuable because it tells you kind of where it's residing at the moment. And there's a decent bit of times where the margins can be actually higher than they currently are. So looking at these, we have the current price, which is the GE current price, really doesn't matter to us. We have the approximate offer price and the approximate sell price. So this is what we would offer, this is what we would sell at. And if items are worth, typically what I'd say is probably about 10 mil or more, I don't recommend insta buying one and insta selling one to check the margin. I'd rather just go with what GE Tracker says or change the prices a bit and see if I can buy them there. Now you can also filter, say having a maximum price. Personally, I only have 14 mil, so if we put that in, we will get items that I can actually do. So down here we have the torture ornament kit, we have an ancestral hat, and honestly, out of all these, I'd probably like the dragon crossbow or odium ward the best, considering they have some of the highest buying and selling quantities per hour, which is really important just to keep those flips going, because if I can do like 10 flips of these in half an hour, that's way more valuable than doing one torture flip in half an hour. I'd be making 520k down here compared to 180k up here. So you kind of have to balance the GP per merge and the overall amount of merges you can do in the hour, which is obviously going to be higher if they're sold more. So while I use G-Tracker, I know not everyone is going to, so what do you do then? If you have an item that's high priced that you don't want to lose money buying and selling, say I'll insta-buy an ancestral hat for the example, I insta-buy it and see whatever price it comes in at, 13,526. Now, what we do then is we sell it back for the exact same price, 13,526, 123, and we're just going to sell it back for that price. Now we know what we can sell them at, and then from there, basically what we're going to do is in the future, offer a lower price that we feel is sufficient enough to make us money. So here I'd say, you know, maybe 13 mil, 412k. And if I had that much money, I'd throw it in, and then I'd be making about 120, 130k a flip if it ends up hitting. If you're not able to buy a hat and say maybe it isn't coming in for the price you offer, just keep raising the price until you either don't want to offer anymore and then just move on to another item, or you keep raising it until the point at which you get an item, and then you're good to go. So now I want to go through some just extra pointers, but also in the background we'll have a running list of all the GE tracker items currently, so you guys can get ideas of items that sometimes have good margins. So the first thing is quick flipping versus merging. Is it better to invest? Is it better to flip? Personally, if you're someone that is actually going to be willing to go to the Grand Exchange a decent bit, I really do think flipping is way better. Merging should be for people that either just have a ton of side cash, you either have a ton of side cash, you really just can't be asked to flip, or third, you know that this item is going up soon for some reason. You know, if a monster's coming out, maybe you got some knowledge. I mean, if you know that something's going up soon for a certain reason, then feel free to merge. But for the most part, I think flipping is definitely the way to go. Along with that, the one thing I will recommend to you guys a absolute ton is take at least mental note, probably, if not keep an actual log, which is what I did for a certain period of time, of what items are working for you, what their usual margins are, and just keep a list of items that you have and just kind of rate them, you know, just mark off if it was a good flip, if it was a bad flip, and then just keep an idea as far as how these items work for you. And then over time you can kind of tailor your flipping towards the good items, and you'll end up making a lot more money per hour because you finally like corralled a good bunch of them. And then finally, this is a question that I get asked on a lot, and that is undercutting. Do I do it? Do I not do it? As we could see earlier, basically whenever you insta buy and insta sell an item, there's the current price, which means if you offer the highest buy offer by one more GP than anyone else, you're going to get every single buy offer. Same thing for if you sell it 1 GP lower, you're going to sell to every single buyer, which is great, but ultimately there's other people that are flipping that are then going to undercut you, and you're just going to get into undercutting battles. So what I'll say for this is if you're doing high volume items where you're trading a lot, do not undercut, because there's a couple reasons. I mean, really, the people that are doing high volume are a lot more active flippers, like they're around the Grand Exchange more, so they're going to be more prone to change their prices according to yours, and then you just get into a war as we're talking about. In addition to that, though, with high volume items, basically, you know, if I buy, say, one Ranar unfinished potion, that looks pretty suspicious. You know, people typically buy high volume items in bigger bulks. So once you see someone buy one and then you're not selling them anymore, you know that someone undercut you. They checked your price, they changed theirs, and now they're undercutting you. So they're going to undercut back. So for high volume, do not mess with it. I'd say personally just go with the same price as the current market and you should be good to go. If you're doing low volume or med volume items, for the most part, I would say it is better to undercut, considering your GE limits typically are 8 to 10, so you're not going to have to undercut each other a lot, rarely ever. And even more so for low volume items, I mean, it is so essential. So undercutting, not necessarily great at the beginning, but over time I think has more and more value. Even though inherently the idea of undercutting, no one should do it, but considering, you know, people are going to, you have to play accordingly. Alright, so that's it for me and the Pink Dude. We're out of here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, though. If you did, make sure to leave a like. And any questions you may still have, leave them down below in a comment. I will heart my favorites, and I will also answer them. And if you enjoyed the video and want to see more, make sure to subscribe to the channel. But for us today, that's going to be it. Okay, thanks, bye.